Welcome to Whispers Through Time channel. Today, a pirate of the Caribbean will tell you his story and immerse you in the world of piracy. Chapter 1: The Boy Before the Storm. I was not born to the sea. At least that is what my mother used to say. She would sit by the small window of our crooked house, where the wind always found its way through the cracks, and watch the harbor from a distance, as if keeping it there, far enough that it would not take me too. "The sea takes more than it gives," she would whisper. But I think even then I already belonged to it. I was born in a port town where the air never smelled clean. Salt. Rotting fish. Tar. Wet rope. It clung to your skin, your clothes, your breath. You could wash your hands 100 times, and still, the harbor would remain with you. The streets were narrow and restless. Men shouted. Crates slammed. Gulls cried like something starving. Ships groaned against their ropes as if they were alive and eager to leave. And I watched. As a boy, I spent more time on the docks than at home. Not because I wanted to escape, but because everything I wanted to understand was there. Ships from lands I had never seen. Men with accents I could barely follow. Stories spoken in fragments, half-truths, half-lies, about storms that swallowed fleets, islands of gold, and waters so dark they reflected nothing at all. My father was a sailor. Or so I was told. I do not remember his face clearly. Only pieces. A shadow in a doorway. A voice, rough like rope dragged across wood. Hands that smelled of salt and iron. He left when I was young. Or perhaps, the sea took him. No one ever said it plainly. In places like ours, men did not disappear. They were simply gone. My mother never spoke ill of him. But she never spoke of him, either. Only once, when I asked if he would return, she paused long enough for me to understand the answer before she said it. Men like him, she said quietly, do not come back the same if they come back at all. We did not have much. Some days, we had almost nothing. I learned early how to make myself useful. Carrying sacks. Dragging rope. Cleaning decks for coins that barely fed us. The harbor did not care how old you were. If you could stand, you could work. And so I worked. Barefoot on splintered wood. Hands blistered before they hardened. Back bent before it had time to grow straight. But I did not hate it. Not truly. Because even then, there was something about the ships. The way they stood against the horizon. Tall. Silent. Waiting. I would watch them for hours when I could. Imagining where they had been. Where they would go next. What kind of men they carried. And sometimes, when the wind shifted just right, I could hear it. Not the waves. Not the creaking wood. Something else. A call. I did not have words for it then. But I understand it now. It was the promise of something beyond hunger. Beyond narrow streets and empty tables. Beyond the quiet life that slowly wears a man down until there is nothing left of him but routine. The sea did not promise safety. It did not promise kindness. But it promised more. The first time I saw them, I was no older than 12. I remember the day clearly. The sky was heavy, the kind that presses down on the world before a storm. The harbor was louder than usual, restless, uneasy. Something was coming. You could feel it. The ship entered slowly. Different from the others. Lower in the water. Darker. Quieter. There was no flag at first. Only men. Standing along the deck. Watching the shore as if they owned it already. The harbor changed. Men who never stopped talking fell silent. Others moved away without explanation. Even the gulls seemed to keep their distance. I should have been afraid. A boy in my place, a boy with any sense, would have been. But I wasn't. Because I saw something I had never seen before. Freedom. Not the kind spoken of in churches or whispered in dreams. Something raw. Untamed. Dangerous. These men did not belong to anyone. Not to kings. Not to laws. Not to the quiet expectations that bind a man long before he understands them. They stepped onto the dock like they had already taken it. Not loudly. Not arrogantly. But with certainty. And for the first time in my life, I felt small in a different way. Not from hunger. Not from fear. But from the realization that there was a world I had not yet touched. One of them looked at me as he passed. Just for a moment. There was no kindness in his eyes. No cruelty, either. Only something colder. Something distant. As if he had already seen too much to be surprised by anything. And yet, he smiled. Not at me. Not really. But at something beyond me. At the life he had chosen. I stood there long after they were gone. The harbor slowly returning to its noise, its motion, its. But something had changed. In me. That night, my mother spoke as she always did. Warned me, as she always had. Told me the sea was not for boys like me. I listened. As I always did. But for the first time, I did not believe her. Because I had seen them. And I understood something I could not yet explain. The sea does not call to everyone. But when it does not whisper. It waits. Chapter 2, No Law, No King. The sea did not take me in a single moment. It did not come for me with storm or fire. It came slowly. Like hunger. Like time. By the time I was 15, the harbor no longer felt like a place of wonder. It felt like a cage. The same ships. The same men. The same endless labor for coins that slipped through our hands as quickly as they came. My mother grew thinner with each passing season. Her hands, once steady, began to tremble when she worked. And I began to understand something I had tried to ignore. Staying meant becoming nothing. So when the opportunity came, I took it. It was not glory. It was not adventure. It was desperation. A merchant vessel needed hands. Not sailors. Not trained men. Just bodies. Cheap. Replaceable. I lied about my age. They did not care. The ship was called the Providence. A proud name for something that felt more like a floating prison. The first night at sea, I could not sleep. Not from fear. But from the movement. The constant rise and fall beneath me. As if the world itself had become unstable. The older sailors laughed. You'll get used to it, they said. They were wrong. You do not get used to the sea. You learn to endure it. Life aboard was worse than anything I had known on land. Orders were not given. They were shouted. Mistakes were not corrected. They were punished. Food was scarce. Water tasted like wood and rot. The air below deck was thick with sweat and sickness. And the captain. He ruled with something colder than anger. Indifference. To him, we were not men. We were tools. If one broke, another would replace him. I learned quickly. Faster than I thought I could. Because out there, you either learned or you disappeared. Days blurred together. Then weeks. The horizon never changed. Only the sky. And slowly, the thing that once called to me fell silent. The sea was no longer a promise. It was weight. Endless. Unforgiving. I began to think my mother had been right. That this was all it ever was. Until the day everything changed. It began quietly. Too quietly. The wind had died. The sails hung limp. The ship drifted, suspended in a stillness that felt unnatural. Even the men spoke less. As if something unseen had placed a hand over the world. Then. A shout. Sail. Every head turned. At first, I saw nothing. Just the horizon. Endless and empty. Then. A shape. Low. Dark. Moving with purpose. It came fast. Too fast for a ship with no wind. The tension spread before the truth did. Men moved. Weapons appeared. Orders were shouted, not with authority this time, but with fear. And then, the flag. Black. I felt something inside me tighten. Not fear. Not yet. Recognition. They came like a storm that had chosen its target. Grappling hooks. Ropes thrown across our deck. Men crossing with a speed and precision I had never seen before. The first clash was chaos. Steel against steel. Shouts. Blood. I froze. For only a moment. Because this was not like the stories. There was no glory here. No heroism. Only survival. A man rushed past me. Then another fell beside me. I did not know his name. But I remember the sound he made when he hit the deck. It stayed with me longer than the fight. It ended quickly. Too quickly. The captain was dragged forward. Kneeling. His authority gone as if it had never existed. The pirates stood around him. Calm. Controlled. Not wild. Not chaotic. Certain. The men who stepped forward, the one they made space for, was not what I expected. He did not shout. He did not boast. He simply looked. And that was enough. You have a choice, he said. Not to the captain. To us. Die for a man who would replace you before your body hits the water. He paused. Or live as a man who answers to no one. Silence. The kind that stretches time. I looked at the deck. At the blood. At the men who had worked beside me. Men who had suffered beside me. Men who would die for nothing. Then I looked at them. The pirates. And I remembered. The harbor. The ship. The way they had walked. The way they had been. Free. The decision came before I fully understood it. I'll go, I said. My voice did not shake. The men looked at me. The same way that other one had, years ago. And this time, I did not feel small. I felt chosen. Others followed. Not many. But enough. The rest were not given a second chance. I did not watch. Not because I could not. But because I had already crossed something I could not return from. That night, I stood on a different deck. A different ship. The air felt the same. Salt. Wind. Endless sea. But everything else was different. No orders shouted in anger. No chains disguised as discipline. Only a strange kind of order. One I did not yet understand. You're nothing here, a man told me. Until you prove otherwise. I nodded. Because for the first time in my life, being nothing felt like the beginning of something. They gave me work. Simple at first. Carrying powder. Cleaning weapons. Watching. Learning. And slowly, I changed. Not all at once. But piece by piece. Fear became focus. Hesitation became instinct. And the boy who once stood on the docks, watching ships pass by, began to disappear. In his place, something harder was forming. Something shaped by salt. By blood. By choice. I was no longer waiting for the sea to take me. I had stepped into it. Willingly. And in doing so, I had left behind the last piece of the life I once knew. A world with laws. With rules. With kings. Out here, there was only one truth. No law. No king. Only what a man could take. And what he could survive. Chapter 3, Under the Black Flag. A ship is more than wood. More than sail and rope and iron. It breathes. It groans. It remembers. The first night I stood upon her deck, I felt it. Not in the wind. Not in the sway beneath my feet. But in the men. They moved differently. Spoke differently. Laughed in a way I had never heard before. Not freely. Not lightly. But like men who had already lost too much to fear losing more. The ship was called the Widow's Mercy. A cruel name, I thought at first. But I would come to understand. It was honest. She was not large. Not like the merchant vessels that carried silver and silk. But she was fast. Low in the water. Lean. Built not for comfort. But for pursuit. Her wood was darkened by time and salt. Her sails patched, but strong. Her guns. Always ready. And her crew. Her crew was something else entirely. There were no uniforms. No ranks marked by cloth or color. But there was order. Clearer than anything I had known before. Every man had his place. Every man had his say. And every man carried his own weight. Or he did not remain. I learned quickly where I stood. At the very bottom. Powder monkey, they called me at first. I carried shot. Fetched tools. Ran messages between men who barely acknowledged my existence. But I watched. I listened. I learned. Because on a ship like this, knowledge was survival. The cannons fascinated me. Not the noise. Not the destruction. But the precision. Everything had a rhythm. Load. Ram. Prime. Fire. Mistake the order. And you did not just fail. You died. The man who oversaw them was called Briggs. Scar across his face. Voice like gravel. Hand steady as stone. He did not speak much. But when he did, men listened. You're too slow, he told me the first time I carried powder to him. I won't be, I replied. He looked at me then. Longer than most did. See that you aren't, he said. From that day, I stayed near the guns. Closer than most thought I should. And slowly. He allowed it. Taught me, in pieces. Never kindly. Never gently. But thoroughly. By the end of that season, I was no longer just carrying powder. I was part of the rhythm. A gunner's mate. Not by title. Not yet. But by trust. And trust, on that ship, was worth more than gold. The captain watched all of this. Though he rarely spoke to me directly. Captain Hale. A man carved from something harder than most. He did not raise his voice. Did not waste words. But when he stepped onto the deck, everything changed. Not out of fear. But certainty. He knew what he was doing. And more importantly, he knew what we were. We are not chaos, I once heard him say to a man who had drunk too much and spoken too loudly. We are purpose. The men did not argue. No one did. Because beneath the violence, beneath the blood and the smoke, there was something almost structured. Shares of plunder divided fairly. Votes cast when decisions mattered. Punishments given when lines were crossed. Not law. But not madness either. Something in between. Something that worked. My first real battle came without warning. Dawn had barely touched the horizon when the lookout called down. Sail to the east. I was already moving before I was told to. The deck shifted beneath my feet as men took their positions. No shouting. No panic. Only action. We closed the distance fast. The wind favored us. Or perhaps We had simply learned how to take advantage of it. The ship ahead of us was slower. Heavier. Unprepared. I could see them scrambling. Men running. Orders too late. Ready, Briggs said. My hands moved without thought. Load. Ram. Prime. Fire. The world broke open. The sound was not something you hear. It is something you feel. In your chest. In your bones. The recoil nearly threw me back. Smoke filled the air. Thick. Burning. Blinding. But I did not stop. Again. And again. And again. Until the other ship slowed. Then stopped. And then. We boarded. That part, I will not pretend, was easy. Up close, there is no distance. No illusion. Just men. Fighting. Surviving. Dying. I did what I had to. No more. No less. And when it was over, I stood there. Breathing hard. Hands shaking. Not from fear. But from something else. Understanding. This was the life. Not the stories. Not the freedom I had imagined as a boy. This. Noise. Violence. Choice. And consequence. That night, I sat alone at the edge of the deck. The sea dark. Endless. Briggs sat beside me. For a while, he said nothing. Then. You stayed, he said. I did. You didn't run. There was nowhere to run. He gave a small, almost invisible nod. That's not why, he said. I did not answer. Because I knew he was right. I had chosen this. Fully. Without illusion now. And as I looked out into the black horizon, I understood something I had not before. The flag we sailed under was not just a symbol. It was a line. And I had crossed it. There was no going back. Only forward. Under the black flag. Chapter 4, Rot, Hunger, and Silence. There is a lie told on land. A comfortable one. That pirates live in freedom. That we take what we want. That we answer to no one. And in part, that is true. But what they do not tell you is the cost. Because the sea does not care who you are. Not a king. Not a captain. Not a man who believes himself free. Out there. Freedom is just another word for exposure. To hunger. To sickness. To time. It does not come all at once. It begins slowly. Quietly. The food runs thin first. Barrels that once felt endless begin to empty faster than expected. Biscuit turns hard. Then soft. Then alive. You learn not to look too closely before you eat. Because if you do, you will not eat at all. Water follows. Stagnant. Warm. Tasting of wood, rot, and something worse. But you drink it anyway. Because thirst does not bargain. I remember the first time I saw a man refuse water. He lasted 2 days. After that, no one refused anything. The body adapts. It must. But there are things it cannot fight. The sickness comes next. It starts in the gums. Small at first. A little blood. A little pain. Then more. Teeth loosen. Flesh swells. Skin pales. Men who once stood strong begin to bend. Slowly. Like something inside them is collapsing. Scurvy. We did not always call it that. Sometimes we called it fate. Because once it took hold, it did not often let go. I watched men change. Day by day. Strong hands becoming weak. Sharp eyes growing dull. voices fading into whispers. Until one morning, they did not rise at all. And the sea took them. No ceremony. No memory. Just a splash. And silence. But sickness was only one enemy. The storms. The storms were something else entirely. They do not announce themselves with words. Only signs. A shift in the air. A heaviness in the sky. A stillness that feels wrong. And then they come. The wind howls like something alive. The sea rises, not in waves, but in walls. The ship, our ship, becomes small. Fragile. Helpless. Men who feared nothing begin to pray. Not loudly. Not proudly. But quietly. Under their breath. As if ashamed. I remember one storm more than the others. It came at night. No stars. No horizon. Only darkness. And water. The deck vanished beneath waves. The mast screamed like it would tear free. Rope snapped. Wood cracked. And for a moment. A single, terrible moment. I believed it was over. Not in fear. Not in panic. But in certainty. Because there is a point in every storm where a man understands. He is not meant to survive. We held on. Not out of courage. But because there was nothing else to do. And somehow, we endured. When morning came, the sea was calm again. As if nothing had happened. But we had changed. We always did. There were fewer of us. There were always fewer of us. And then there was the silence. Not the silence of calm seas. But the silence between men. Long voyages change people. The laughter fades. The stories stop. Men sit alone. Thinking. Remembering. Or trying not to. Because out there is nothing to distract you. No streets. No crowds. No life beyond the ship. Only the same faces. The same horizon. The same endless repetition of survival. And in that silence, thoughts grow louder. Regret. Doubt. Memory. I began to think of home again. Not often. But enough. The narrow streets. The harbor. My mother. Her voice. Her warnings. The sea takes more than it gives. I had not believed her then. But now. I began to understand. Because for every coin we took. For every ship we claimed. For every moment of freedom we tasted. The sea demanded something in return. Not all at once. But slowly. Piece by piece. A man here. A hand lost there. A mind that never quite returned. Until one day. You looked around. And realized. There was less of you left than when you began. And yet. We stayed. Not because we did not see it. But because by then. There was nowhere else to go. The land no longer called to us. Only the sea remained. Cruel. Endless. Unforgiving. And still. We followed it. Because even knowing the cost. We had already paid too much. To turn back. Chapter 5, Gold and Fire. By the time the sea had taken its share of us. What remained? Was sharper. Harder. More dangerous. We no longer spoke of freedom. Not the way we once had. We spoke of opportunity. Because that is what kept a man moving forward. When there was nothing left behind him. Gold. It was never just about wealth. Not truly. It was proof. That the hunger. The sickness. The storms. Meant something. Or at least, that is what we told ourselves. Our work became more deliberate, more calculated. No longer reckless attacks on whatever crossed our path. We chose our targets. Merchant ships heavy with cargo. Spanish vessels burdened with silver. Isolated routes where help would never come. Captain Hale did not rush. He waited. Watched. Learned. And when he struck, it was precise. Speed wins battles, he once said. But patience wins wars. I believed him. Because I had seen it. One mission remains clearer than the rest. Not because it was the largest, but because it was the moment I crossed a line I did not yet see. We had been tracking a Spanish galleon for 3 days. A massive thing. Slow. Heavy. But rich. Even from a distance, you could feel it. Men whispered about it at night. Not loudly. Never loudly. Because speaking too much of gold has a way of turning men against each other. We followed at the edge of sight. Far enough to remain unseen. Close enough to never lose them. The sea was calm. Too calm. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. On the 4th night, we moved. No cannon fire. No warning. Just darkness. And silence. We approached under the cover of night. Our sails trimmed. Our lanterns covered. The galleon did not see us. Not until it was too late. By the time they raised the alarm, we were already upon them. Hooks thrown. Lines pulled tight. And then we crossed. Boarding in silence is different. There is no roar. No chaos. Only controlled violence. A hand over a mouth. A blade in the dark. A body that falls without sound. I moved with the others. Faster now. More certain. No hesitation. That part of me had already been worn away. We reached the lower deck, where the cargo was kept. Chests. Barrels. Locked crates. Gold. Silver. Coin enough to change a man's life. If he lived long enough to spend it. But something went wrong. It always does. A guard. Missed. Or late. Or simply unlucky. A shout broke the silence. And in an instant, everything changed. The ship came alive. Men rushed from every direction. Steel flashed. Voices rose. The quiet precision. Gone. Replaced by chaos. I found myself face to face with a man. Not much older than me. He hesitated. Just for a second. And in that second, I saw it. Fear. The same fear I had once felt. The same fear I had left behind. He spoke. I do not remember the words. Perhaps it does not matter. Because I did not answer. I acted. It was quick. It had to be. And when it was done, I stood there. Breathing. Watching. Not him. Myself. Waiting to feel something. Regret. Shock. Anything. But there was nothing. Only silence. And that was the moment I knew. I had changed. Not just in skill. Not just in strength. But in something deeper. Something that does not return once lost. We took the ship. Of course we did. We always did. The gold was ours. The victory complete. Men laughed that night. Drank. Celebrated. As if nothing had been taken in return. But I did not join them. I sat alone. As I had begun to do more often. The coin in my hand felt heavier than it should. Not because of its weight. But because of what it meant. What it had cost. Briggs found me there. You did well, he said. I nodded. You hesitate, he added. Not anymore, I replied. He studied me for a moment. Then said something I would not understand until much later. That's not always a good thing. He left me with that. And I sat there, listening to the waves, feeling the ship move beneath me, holding something I had once believed I wanted, and realizing gold does not feel the same when you know what it has replaced. Because the truth is, the sea does not just take your body, or your strength, or your time. It takes your edges, the parts of you that hesitate, that question, that feel. Until one day, you act without thinking, and call it survival. But somewhere beneath it, you begin to wonder. At what point does survival become something else? Chapter 6, The Last Horizon. In the end, it is never the battle you expect. Not the grand pursuit. Not the clash of ships beneath a burning sky. No. It comes quietly. Like everything else the sea takes. We had grown bold by then. Too bold. Gold had a way of doing that. Each victory made the next feel certain. Each survival made death feel distant. We had taken ships we should not have touched. Crossed routes watched by men far more powerful than we cared to admit. And still, we sailed. Because turning back had long since stopped being an option. The day we saw them, there was no mistaking what they were. Warships. Not one. 3. Low, fast, armed for something more than trade. The flag they carried did not matter. Because men like them did not hunt for flags. They hunted for us. A silence fell over the deck. Not fear. Not yet. Recognition. Captain Hale stood at the helm. Still. Unmoving. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then. Turn with the wind, he ordered. We ran. And for a time, it almost felt possible. The Widow's Mercy was fast. Faster than most. The wind favored us. The sea was steady. Distance stretched. Hope, a dangerous thing, began to rise. Then the wind changed. It always does. The sails slackened. The ship slowed. And behind us, they did not. The first shot came like thunder. Not close. Not yet. But close enough. The second. Closer. Wood splintered along the edge of the deck. Men moved faster now. Not in order. But in urgency. Ready the guns. Briggs shouted. We turned. Not because we wanted to. But because there was nowhere left to run. The battle that followed was not like the others. There was no advantage. No surprise. Only force. They closed in from both sides. Cutting us off. Driving us inward. Cannons roared. Smoke swallowed the air. The deck shook beneath my feet with every impact. Men fell. Got up. Fell again. Briggs was beside me. As he always had been. Steady. He shouted. My hands moved without thought. Load. Ram. Prime. Fire. Again. 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 Until the rhythm broke. A shot struck the side of the ship. Closer than the rest. Too close. The world shifted. I hit the deck hard. The air forced from my lungs. For a moment. There was nothing. Then. Sound returned. Distant. Muffled. Like I was underwater. I pushed myself up. Slowly. The deck was different. Broken. Burning in places. Men shouting. Some I knew. Some I did not recognize anymore. I looked for Briggs. Found him. He did not move. I did not go to him. Because I already knew. The ship lurched again. Harder this time. Water. It was coming in fast. Too fast. The hull's gone. Someone shouted. And just like that, it was over. Not with a final strike. Not with a moment of glory. But with inevitability. Captain Hale still stood. Even then. Abandon ship, he said. No panic. No fear. Just truth. Men moved. Some to boats. Some to the water. Some did not move at all. I stood there for a moment longer than I should have. Looking at the ship. The widow's mercy. The place that had taken everything from me. And given me something in return I could never name. Then. I jumped. The water was cold. Colder than I expected. It closed around me like a hand. Heavy. Pulling. For a moment. I let it. Not from weakness. But from understanding. Because I knew. This was always how it would end. Not in a bed. Not in peace. But here. With the sea. I forced myself upward. Broke the surface. Gasped. Around me. Debris. Voices. Silence. The ship circled. Watching. Waiting. Not rescuing. Never rescuing. I grabbed onto a piece of broken wood. Held it. The sky above was clear. Calm. As if none of it had happened. I began to laugh. Not loudly. Not wildly. But quietly. Because my mother had been right. All along. The sea takes more than it gives. I had not listened. Or perhaps. I had. And chosen it anyway. Time passed. I do not know how much. The voices faded. The ships moved on. Leaving what remained. To the water. I drifted. Alone. The horizon stretched endlessly in every direction. No land. No path. Only the same line I had followed my entire life. I thought of the harbor. Of the boy I had been. Standing barefoot on the docks. Watching ships disappear into the distance. Believing they carried something greater. He had been right. They did. But not what he thought. The sea does not give you a new life. It takes the one you had. And replaces it with something else. Something harsher. Something truer. Something that ends. Exactly like this. Alone. Between sky and water. With nothing left. But memory. My hands loosened. Not from weakness. But from acceptance. Because in the end. There is no escaping it. Not the sea. Not the choices you make upon it. And as the water closed over me. Quiet. Endless. Unforgiving. I understood the only truth that had ever mattered. The sea does not belong to men. Men belong to the sea. And in time. It takes us all.